I'm Zara Maung, editor of Climate Change Corp, and I'm joined today by Michael Allegretti, head of government relations at the Climate Group. Hi, Michael.
Hi, how are you?
Thanks. So we're here to talk today about the US elections coming up and where both presidential candidates stand on climate change as well as the Congress in the US. If you could first talk about the legacy that President Bush has left behind in terms of the politics and financial status, and how that impacts on climate change.
Well, interesting choice of words with the term legacy, for sure. I think it's safe to say that President Bush has not been an ardent supporter of climate legislation in the United States, nor federal action on climate change. However, that being said, and that being noted by the international community and the U.S. community, we need to try to think about what does that mean right now for us. And there is actually an opportunity born from 8 years of inaction in the U.S., and that is that there's a growing impetus among American voters and among many members of Congress to get something done and get something done sooner rather than later. In the face of the financial crisis, that's actually helpful, because had we have been moving down a more progressive climate path throughout the last 8 years, you could imagine a scenario where the financial crisis comes and we just would stop any forward progress, saying, well, we've acted already, we've done something, let's stop immediately. But there is such a yearning in the American public for something to be done at the federal level that I think this could actually be helpful moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point, but what about the financial crisis? It's a concern for most of the voting American public, and are we going to start seeing the presidential candidates perhaps backtracking on some of the things they said about investing in green technologies, and especially Obama's pledge on pumping billions into the new green economy?
I'm not sure that you'll see the candidates backtracking on their pledges, because they've stated these pledges during the campaign to have the U.S. take federal mandatory action on climate, and they've also stated that they want the U.S. to lead internationally. What I do think you'll see, and you're already seeing it, we have seen it, is a pivot on what climate action means. And it means now, in the U.S. context, action on climate, but also action on energy independence, energy security. So you're going to see a confluence of multiple issues, mainly energy, the environment, and economic growth combined into one track. There are pros and cons to that. I mean, the obvious pro is political, in so much as you can now package climate legislation in a way that will resonate better with more members of the U.S. Congress, and frankly with a wider swath of the U.S. electorate. That's important. I mean, the reality says, make it broader, it'll move. The downside, of course, is, or the risk is, you lose sight of the environmental goals. You lose sight of, as we were talking about before, the true energy efficiency, renewable energy goals that we need to see in that package. So there are trade-offs for sure. And I think any bill that comes out of Congress, or the rhetoric that you're seeing from the campaigns on climate and energy independence and economic growth, it has domestic oil exploration in it. That's a reality that we need to understand for a moment. The Democrat and the Republican are calling for increased domestic oil and gas production. So what does that mean? It means it's politically expedient, but we run the risk of losing the sight of the true environmental benefits.
Yeah, in terms of the energy crisis, there's a problem with energy security now, and it's a big issue in this election. How can you see those two tying in? How can you see the two presidential candidates interweaving managing energy security along with their environmental goals?
So what the two candidates say on the trail in terms of energy security, energy independence, the climate crisis, basically you have a lot of crises going on. You have a climate crisis, an energy crisis, and now a fiscal crisis. All of these things do not bode well for the next man that walks into what you can consider a dark White House. This is not a place where you're going to want to be in the next 6 months, dealing with crisis after crisis. But there's an upside to that. I mean, we need to, as a business community and as a community committed to seeing action on climate change, We need to see the opportunities that come from the current reality. So you've got all these crises lined up, one after another. Well, there has to be some good news. People cannot live in a perpetual state of crisis after crisis. It's just not, it's not good for your poll numbers as a leader. So I anticipate that the next president will foremost put the economic crisis at the front of the list. And that'll be something that he will deal with on day one. We even see McCain trying to deal with it during the campaign, for heaven's sakes. But you'll see him dealing with it from day one and throughout the tenure of his first year in office, for sure. After that, I think you'll see the next president put something forward that is directly related to the base of voters that helped to get him elected. And I'm not sure what that initiative will be, but it'll be rather targeted and it'll play to that base constituency. But then there's always a third thing. Presidents, I think in threes. We all think in threes. And that third thing needs to be forward-looking. It needs to be long-term, and it needs to be optimistic. And perhaps lucky for us, dovetailing energy and climate together into a package that brings America onto a new energy track is a forward-looking good thing. And it resonates with voters if it can lower gas prices in the short term, because they'll see that in their wallets, but also if it lowers their home electricity bills through energy efficiency and things of that sort. So I think you'll see some sort of climate package that comes out from the Congress with the president's support, but as we were saying before, it's going to need to be packaged a bit differently and be more economy-wide and energy-focused.